Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game Esoteric. And continuing series, is that an analog in your pocket or are you just happy to see me? And today we're doing something a little bit differently. I'm going to be going over the Neo Geo core and the games I recommend you play. Because not everyone grew up with Neo Geo in arcades, not everyone has a home console, and you may not have delved deeply into the library or be very familiar with the Neo Geo in general. And trust me, the Analogue Pocket is a hell of a lot easier to fit into your pants than something like a Neo Geo AES with the cartridges. Before we get too far involved though, do me a huge favor, go down below, hit like and subscribe and ring that notification bell, definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, we got a Patreon link down below as well. But right off the top, obviously the Neo Geo AES and MVS is absolutely stocked with awesome, amazing 10 out of 10 arcade fighting games. And for my money, the most competent, best game on the platform has got to be Geru Mark of the Wolves. That's why I showed it next to my Neo Geo and Analogue Pocket. This is just SNK at their absolute best, firing on all cylinders, making one of the best 2D fighting games of all time. I would put this up against Street Fighter 2, Street Fighter 3, or any of the other Street Fighter games ever made in 2D from Capcom and say it's as good if not slightly better. Obviously that's a contentious viewpoint, but I've been an SNK fan for the longest time, and this game is just absolute perfection. It shows off exactly what the Neo Geo AES hardware could do visually with all of the different tricks the SNK and the developers had learned up until that point in time, because this is a later stage release and it just absolutely still 100% holds up as far as a fighting game is concerned. And SNK has a sequel under development right now. Hopefully it will be out maybe around Christmas time, fingers crossed. So if you've never played this game before, just load it up on your Analogue Pocket and trust me, you're going to absolutely fall in love with it. And again, if you need controllers, the Neo Geo CD pad is an awesome option for the console, works directly with the dock, as does the 8-bit DOE arcade stick as well. But arcade support for controllers is a little bit limited on Analogue Pocket, so those are the two I recommend. But again, a 10 out of 10 game, Hall of Fame perfect in my opinion. And of course I can't talk about the Neo Geo without talking about the Metal Slug games, and recently I did a video on the Overdrive core that overclocks the CPU, giving you better performance in Metal Slug 2 and Metal Slug X. But Metal Slug 1 through 3 are absolutely spectacular, amazing games that are super challenging and some of the best 2D visuals I think I've ever seen. And Metal Slug 4 and 5 are a decent time, not as good as the others, but still worth playing through the entire way. And it's just one of those things, when you think Neo Geo, you think Metal Slug. So if you've never played it before, let this be your notification that you need to check these games out. And if it's been a while since you played it, now is the time to revisit it. And if you love the series, leave me a comment down below and tell me what your favorite entry is. I did a retrospective on all of the Metal Slug games like 2 years ago, so I will leave a link to that playlist in the description below as well if you want to find out what all of the games are and which ones you should start with. But Metal Slug is synonymous with Neo Geo, and they run so incredibly well on the Analogue Pocket based on the Mr. FPGA core port. And these are the type of games that are so good for portable experiences. They last like 35 minutes and then the game ends, which is perfect for something like Analogue Pocket when you are on the go. And do be aware, like I said in a previous video, if you go into the Neo Geo menu, you want to change the core for the Metal Slug games from Neo Geo to Neo Geo Overdrive. Just make sure you've updated your Pocket recently and you should have that core. It'll keep the slowdown to a minimum for the Metal Slug games. Now going back to the fighting game genre, I can't say anything about fighting games if I do not talk about The Last Blade, which is almost like a spiritual successor to Samurai Shodown, even though SNK was making Samurai Shodown games at that point in time. And this is the complete opposite to something like Geru Mark of the Wolves. Yes, it's a fighting game, but it's a much slower, more methodical, more thinking man's game. Attacks can take a ton of life bar off, there are going to be fatalities. It's exactly the same genre as something like Geru Mark of the Wolves, but it plays in a completely different play style. You're going to be a little bit slower in this game, kind of trying to figure out where your openings are and how to poke your opponent with some of those heavy strikes so you can really take that life bar off. And again, because it is a later stage Neo Geo game, it has some of the best 2D visuals on the console. This was definitely an aesthetically pleasing game and had a completely different vibe than anything King of Fighters or Fatal Fury ever did, and I absolutely love that. I still consider this to be one of the best 2D fighting games of all time. And I know even if you realize what Mark of the Wolves is, or you played a King of Fighters game, The Last Blade is definitely a deeper cut, pun very much intended, and maybe you haven't checked it out before. So if you've never played it, trust me, just give this one a shot as well. It is so incredibly good, and all of these games obviously have 2-player support on a dock, so they are perfect for game nights. If you have some friends that are into fighting games, throw on The Last Blade and you are guaranteed to have a good time. But there are other genres, of course, on Neo Geo, and shmups are well represented. For my money, the best shmup on the system has got to be Pulsar. This is definitely more like an R-type game. It's slower, and you need to plan a little bit more versus a bullet hell game. But this, to me, is probably one of the best shmups ever made, in my opinion, and it is a genre with a very deep bench to choose from, but I've always enjoyed this game. It has such amazing graphics, such challenging gameplay, a fun weapon system where you constantly get upgrades and figure out what works for you. This is just another one of those classic experiences on Neo Geo, and it is a game not made by SNK, because I did want to diversify the offerings here, not to just talk about SNK titles. And the best part is, again, it's a perfect portable game, but trust me, you're going to die early and die often. It's highly challenging in the best way possible, so you're going to have to learn what the game expects of you, and that is so good. And it also has a banging soundtrack. Listen, and I'll be right back. Awesome soundtrack, awesome gameplay, incredible graphics, and it is perfect on Analogue Pocket. And trust me, if you actually wanted to buy a copy of this game on Neo Geo AES, you're talking 2 to 3 months of your mortgage or rent payments, depending on what sort of deal you find. It is incredibly expensive, it's incredibly rare, and it's incredibly fun. If you've never played it before, definitely check it out. If it's been some years, now's the time to revisit. And if you've never heard of it before, leave me a comment down below, because I would be curious how many people know some of the non-fighting games on Neo Geo. I feel for my audience that's going to be most of you, but you never know who's watching, so I am curious what your relationship with SNK is. Did you play Neo Geo back in the day, or did you come to it more from a modern perspective? Now moving over to Real Bout Fatal Fury Special, once Fatal Fury got through its initial numbered entries on the Neo Geo, it went to the Real Bout series, which is kind of a continuation of the Fatal Fury formula with a little bit more of a modern look and feel. This is basically the games that bridge something like Fatal Fury Special or Fatal Fury 2 or 3 to Geru Mark of the Wolves, and they keep that two-plane system where you can go into the foreground and into the background, which totally changes up how you attack your opponents and how you kind of think about the screen space in a fighting game. So if you played a few too many King of Fighters, or you spent too much time with Geru Mark of the Wolves, throw on a Real Bout game. They are awesome, and for my money, Real Bout Fatal Fury Special is my favorite of the three. It's got, again, great graphics. I love Billy's stage here with the Union Jack in the background and that intro. These are just, again, games that show just how powerful the Neo Geo truly was and how much SNK's developers could get out of that hardware even in the later stages of its lifespan. Something like Hong Kong here, the artwork, the background, just 100% looks spectacular. They're absolutely filled with so many little details. Every single pixel is used to its fullest, and it is just another game that is incredible to play. And interestingly, for all of the SNK games that have near impossible final bosses, somehow Real Bout Fatal Fury Special and Krauser here is actually one of the easier bosses in the entirety of SNK fighting games, in my opinion. So if you've never actually beaten an SNK fighting game before because the final boss absolutely decimates you, start with Real Bout Fatal Fury Special. It should be the first notch on your victory belt for sure. Now moving from a fighting game to a golf game, Neo Turf Masters is, in my opinion, the best golf game ever made, whether you're on home console, arcade, or otherwise. This is just absolutely one of those special titles that nails everything, and if you ask anyone who's ever played this game before, it is basically near unanimous praise. And sure, it is just golf. It's such an easy game to pick up and play, but that is the great part about it. It arcadifies the game of golf, and it does it in the perfect manner. And it's another game that you can just absolutely get a whole course in on your commute to work, which is really what the Analogue Pocket is about. Sure, you dock it when you go home, but a lot of times you're playing on the go. And it's games like Neo Turf Masters that personify what the Analogue Pocket is the best at, being a portable FPGA gaming device. This is just the type of game you think you're going to sit down and play 15-20 minutes of, but if you're at home on the dock, you may end up playing for 2-3 hours and not even noticing how much time went by. And that is how incredibly good this game is. So if you've never played a golf game before, make your first and last golf game Neo Turf Masters. Now moving on to the fighting game genre again, but from a different developer, Sunsoft here. This is Waku Waku 7. I would say it's more in the A- tier of fighting games on the Neo Geo versus the A+ with stuff like Garu Mark of the Wolves, but it is a super bright, super cheery, super colorful fighting game that just absolutely dials up the insanity to 11. I love the graphics in this game. I love the sprites and character designs. I love everything about it. It is just such a fun time. And while this did come to the Sega Saturn and got other ports, the Neo Geo original is always going to be the best, and it's one of those games I feel like maybe not many people have played. Sure, the roster only has 7 characters to choose from, hence Waku Waku 7, but what it lacks in character diversity, it more than makes up for in absolutely fun fighting game mechanics and just a look and feel in a fighting game that you didn't get that much of on the Neo Geo. Mirakun there absolutely has one of the biggest butts in fighting games as well. I've always thought it was hilarious how big they made that thing. But all jokes aside, this is just another fun title that's perfect to play alone with the CPU or with friends. And again, with all of the good Neo Geo music that we can talk about, this has one of my favorite soundtracks in the entirety of the Neo Geo library. So I'm going to let you listen just for like 25 seconds, but don't go too far because I have a ton more Neo Geo games to show you. But leave me a comment down below and tell me if you've ever played Waku Waku 7 because I'm curious to see who has. But here comes this music. It's a 10 out of 10 and I'll be right back with some more games. I love the music and it sounds great coming out of the Analogue Pocket FPGA core, and that's because again it was a port from the Mr. FPGA core and the sound hardware is coded so well. And I also love the fact that it just has one of the weirdest final bosses ever. Fernandez here is a massive giant black ball that looks like it has bat wings and fills the entire screen, seeming like it's a gigantic kaiju battle in the city, and that's just always going to be a fun time. So if you've never played Waku Waku 7 before, put it high up on your list to check out on the Analogue Pocket. The great thing is you can test any game out to see if you like it, and if you don't, your money back guarantee is you don't have to pay me for these videos. Now moving on to Shock Troopers, another run and gun game but completely different than Metal Slug, but still in my opinion one of the best Neo Geo games. And while there is a sequel to this game, the original is the better of the two, and it is just another fun time, and this is a really good game to play with friends. Sure, all of the fighting games are going to be better with a human opponent who also knows the game, but you have to find 2 people that would be experienced and understand the moveset of Waku Waku 7. Something like Shock Troopers though, anyone can instantaneously pick up and play. You run around, you shoot, you throw bombs, you'll be able to master the game's controls in 30 seconds, making it one of those titles that really should be on your list for the next game night if you're playing on Analogue Pocket. There's so many different types of level types. You get these motorcycle levels that almost feel like shmups, you get the run and gun sections, you get some isometric sections. This game basically shows you and gives you a look at every single gameplay style a run and gun game could inhabit, and it does that with awesome mechanics, great graphics, and a really fun soundtrack as well. And pretty much every level has its own unique theme and flair, and some of the boss battles in this game are absolutely epic. You need to learn the patterns really to be able to survive. And don't forget, if you do want to play these games with unlimited credits, just use the Unibios and go over to MVS mode. Then you'll have a coin button and can feed as many coins in as you want, because for the most part all of the AES versions are going to limit you to 5 credits, and once you run out you're not going to be able to continue. So if you want those additional credits, just pop over to MVS mode. For the most part every single game is going to be identical, whether you're playing it in arcade or whether you're playing it as AES. But Shock Troopers is just another one of those classic Neo Geo games. It is a 10 out of 10 in fun, and it's the perfect party type of game to play with friends. But let's talk about one of the most obvious picks that if you've never played, I'm surprised but need to remind you. Puzzle Bobble, or Bust a Move as it's known in North America and Europe, is just synonymous with the Neo Geo. If you saw a Neo Geo cabinet back in the day, odds are it had a Puzzle Bobble cartridge in it, if not more than one. This is just the type of game, if you've never played it, I don't know how, but it is time. And when we showed you Pulse Star earlier, do know that there is a sequel called Blazing Star, which is definitely different as far as the mechanics are concerned. A lot more projectiles, closer to a bullet hell shmup. Not as good as Pulse Star in my opinion, but if Pulse Star is a 10 out of 10, then Blazing Star is like a 9.7 out of 10. Another awesome shmup to check out on the platform. And do be aware, there's a ton more games than I'm showing you here. This should not in any way, shape, or form be considered an exhaustive list of what you should play on Neo Geo. These are just some of my favorite games to pick up and play. So if you're just going through the entire full set of Neo Geo on your Analogue Pocket and you see a game that you've never heard of before, just give it a shot. The worst thing that's going to happen is you're going to lose 5 minutes. The best thing that's going to happen is you might find your new favorite Neo Geo game of all time, because even though the Neo Geo library isn't massive, there's so many different games and so many different genres that are absolutely worth playing. And of course I have to show you at least one King of Fighters game, but it is probably the most well-known franchise from Neo Geo. For my money, I've loved playing King of Fighters 2002 the most, probably just because it's the first Neo Geo AES game I ever bought. But every single game is awesome, save for 2001, which is still fun but a weak entry in the franchise, so just pick one and play. Same thing goes for Samurai Showdown. In my opinion, Samurai Showdown 2 is the best of everything on Neo Geo, but you get a ton of different options all the way through the perfect. So definitely just grab a Samurai Showdown and give it a try. And if you've never played the franchise before, definitely start at Samurai Showdown 2. And of course, The Last Blade got a sequel with The Last Blade 2, which is another spectacular game. If you ask me today which one's better, I will say The Last Blade. If you ask me tomorrow which one's better, I may very well say The Last Blade 2. You honestly can't go wrong with either of these games, but if you've never played either of them, start with the original and move to number 2. It just makes more sense that way. But the sequel is every bit as good as the original in all of the ways that you want it to be. Now for a deep cut classic that I absolutely tell everyone is my favorite Neo Geo game of all time, and one that more people need to play, that's gotta be Power Instinct Matra Melee. A very strange, very fun fighting game with my favorite soundtrack on the Neo Geo. Listen for a moment, I'll be right back to tell you some more. I just absolutely love how weird the soundtrack for Matra Melee truly is, and I'm not here to try to tell you that this is the best fighting game on the Neo Geo. It is not. It is a B-tier effort mechanically. There's so many other games that are probably better in the gameplay front than Power Instinct is, but this game just has so much charm, so much unique weird vibes and flair that it just stuck with me the first time I played it. I have a copy on AES, and it is a game that I will never part with. But if you've never played Power Instinct Matra Melee before, give this one a shot. If you play one game from this entire series that you've never seen before, make it Power Instinct Matra Melee. Just do me that favor to make me happy. But those are my recommendations to get you started on the Neo Geo core on your Analogue Pocket. There's so many other games I could recommend, and I could have made this video 45 minutes long, but I figured about 19 minutes was probably where I wanted to be. But start just testing out random Neo Geo games on your Pocket. I guarantee you some of them aren't going to be great, some of them are going to be your new favorites of all time. And tell me down below if you're very experienced with the Neo Geo library what your favorite game is. I would be curious to hear. And if you like this type of video for Analogue Pocket, let me know. I might make more in the future, but we're done. Go play some Neo Geo and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.